Russia launched what appeared to be an unstoppable offensive through Ukraine's Donetsk region in early March 2025. A massive mechanized column stretched 12 kilometers along Highway M03, carrying over $6 billion in combined military assets. At the spearhead rolled 73 T-90M Pro-Riv tanks, Russia's most advanced main battle units, each valued at approximately $4.5 million. Behind them came 87 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, 42 2S-19 MSTIA self-propelled howitzers, and a support train of fuel trucks, ammunition carriers, and mobile repair stations. Russian commanders believed this concentrated force would punch through Ukrainian defenses near Pokrovsk within 48 hours, opening a direct route to Kramatorsk. The convoy moved with absolute confidence. Russian doctrine called for overwhelming mass at a single point, and General Mikhail Volkov had assembled exactly that. His intelligence reports showed Ukrainian forces in the area numbered fewer than 2,000 troops with minimal armor. Satellite imagery confirmed Ukrainian units were withdrawing westward. Every indicator suggested the path was clearing. What Volkov didn't know was that Ukrainian military intelligence had spent 6 weeks orchestrating precisely this scenario. Ukraine's deception began in late January. The GUR, Ukraine's military intelligence directorate, had identified Russian force concentrations near Mariupol through signals intelligence. Intercepted communications revealed plans for a spring offensive targeting the Donetsk administrative boundaries. Rather than fortify the obvious defensive positions, Ukrainian planners decided to exploit Russian overconfidence. They created a kill zone. The trap's architecture was elegant and brutal. Ukrainian engineers selected a 17-kilometer stretch of Highway M03 that passed through partially forested terrain with a shallow valley formation. The road itself became the weapon. Over 4 weeks, combat engineers buried 47 anti-tank mines along a 3-kilometer section. But here's where Ukrainian planning showed sophistication. The mines weren't placed randomly. They were positioned using precision GPS coordinates to create a cascading failure pattern. When the lead elements of a convoy triggered the first mines, the explosions would force following vehicles into predetermined positions where additional mines waited. This wasn't a minefield. This was a sequential destruction mechanism, but mines alone wouldn't destroy a convoy this size. Ukrainian forces positioned 12 HIMARS launchers in concealed firing positions between 8 and 15 kilometers from the highway. Each launcher was preloaded with M31A1 guided rockets, which deliver a 200-pound high-explosive fragmentation warhead with a circular error probable of just 2 meters. The HIMARS crews had already programmed firing solutions for 64 specific grid coordinates along the highway. They could saturate the entire kill zone with 768 rockets in under 11 minutes. The third layer was electronic warfare. Ukraine deployed R330ZH Zutel jamming systems that could suppress Russian communications across VHF and UHF frequencies. Once the ambush began, Russian commanders would be unable to coordinate their response or call for air support. The jamming systems were positioned to create a communications black hole extending 23 kilometers in radius, ensuring that even units outside the immediate kill zone couldn't effectively respond. On March 7th at 04:15 hours, Russian reconnaissance drones conducted their standard pre-movement sweep of Highway M03. Ukrainian forces had anticipated this. They had withdrawn their visible defensive positions 72 hours earlier, leaving behind just enough abandoned equipment to suggest a hasty retreat. The drones reported an all clear. At 0540, the Russian convoy began moving. The column advanced at 18 kilometers per hour, standard doctrine for mechanized forces in potentially contested territory. Lead elements consisted of mine-clearing vehicles and forward reconnaissance units. Ukrainian spotters, positioned in concealed observation posts 3 kilometers from the highway, tracked every vehicle. They transmitted real-time data to the fire control center via encrypted burst transmissions that lasted less than 0.3 seconds each, too brief for Russian direction-finding equipment to locate. At 0623, the convoy's lead mine-clearing vehicle crossed into the kill zone. Ukrainian commanders waited. This required extraordinary discipline. The temptation to trigger the ambush early is immense, but premature engagement would allow most of the convoy to escape. The Ukrainian fire control officer, a 32-year-old captain named Andriy Kovalenko, watched his display as vehicle after vehicle entered the zone. He had programmed the ambush to trigger when 60% of the convoy was contained within the kill zone boundaries. That percentage represented the optimal balance between maximum destruction and preventing escape. At 0651, Kovalenko Kovalenko's system indicated 59%. At 0652, it hit 61%. He initiated the sequence. The first anti-tank mine detonated under a BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicle at position marker 037. The explosion lifted the 20-ton vehicle 2 meters into the air, severing its chassis. The BMP crashed back to the road, blocking the right lane. 3 seconds later, 2 more mines detonated under tanks attempting to maneuver around the destroyed BMP. The shaped charges, each containing 8 kilograms of military-grade explosive, penetrated the tank's belly armor, the weakest point on any main battle tank. Internal ammunition detonated, turning both T-90Ms into fireballs that reached temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius. The convoy immediately halted. Russian commanders recognized an ambush but critically misidentified the threat. They assumed the mines were the primary danger and ordered vehicles to reverse out of the area. This was exactly what Ukrainian planners had anticipated. As Russian vehicles began backing up, they triggered the second wave of mines positioned specifically for retreating units. 11 more vehicles exploded over the next 90 seconds. Russian commanders then made their second critical error. Unable to retreat through the mines and facing what they believed was primarily a mine threat, they ordered their forces to dismount infantry and advance on foot to locate and destroy the mines, while armored vehicles pushed forward through the presumably limited minefield. At 0655, approximately 400 Russian infantry dismounted and moved away from their vehicles. At 0656, Kovalenko ordered the HIMARS strike. The first salvo of 72 rockets launched simultaneously from 12 positions. The rockets, traveling at nearly Mach 2.5, covered the distance to the target area in 43 seconds. Russian forces had no warning. The Zytel jamming systems had activated the moment the first mine detonated, preventing Russian units from transmitting warnings or coordinating air defense responses. The rockets struck with surgical precision. Each had been programmed to hit specific vehicle types. Anti-tank variants targeted the T-90Ms and self-propelled howitzers. High-explosive fragmentation rounds hit the fuel trucks and ammunition carriers. The valley's terrain worked against the Russians. The explosion's overpressure waves reflected off the valley walls, creating a hammering effect that multiplied the weapon's lethality. 41 T-90M tanks were destroyed in the initial strike. The tanks' relict explosive reactive armor, designed to defeat anti-tank missiles, provided no defense against the top attack profile of the HIMARS rockets. The penetrators came straight down, punching through the turret roof armor and detonating inside the crew compartment. Surviving tank commanders attempted to activate their Stora-1 countermeasure systems, but these were designed to defeat laser-guided missiles, not GPS-guided rockets. They were useless. The ammunition carriers presented a secondary catastrophe. When HIMARS rounds struck the trucks carrying artillery shells and tank ammunition, the resulting explosions created blast waves that destroyed nearby vehicles even if they hadn't been directly hit. One ammunition truck's destruction created an explosion equivalent to 2 tons of TNT. The blast wave flipped a T-90M tank 30 meters away onto its side. Russian commanders attempted to disperse their remaining forces, but the kill zone's geography limited their options. To the north lay marshy ground impassable to heavy vehicles. To the south, Ukrainian engineers had previously destroyed 2 bridges over a tributary river, unnoticed by Russian reconnaissance because the waterway appeared insignificant on maps. The only viable routes were forward or backward along the highway, and both directions were now impassable due to burning vehicles. At 0703, Russian forces attempted to establish air defense coverage. 2 Pantsir S-1 systems in the rear of the convoy activated their radar and began tracking for incoming threats. This was their final mistake. Ukrainian electronic warfare operators had been waiting for exactly this. The moment the Pantsir radars went active, Ukrainian forces triangulated their positions and transmitted coordinates to the HIMARS batteries. 12 seconds later, both air defense systems were obliterated by precision strikes. The second HIMARS salvo launched at 0711. Another 72 rockets impacted over a 40-second period. This wave targeted the vehicles that had survived the initial strike, as well as Russian units attempting to establish defensive positions. The BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, with their lighter armor, were particularly vulnerable. 23 were destroyed, their aluminum hulls unable to withstand the rocket strikes. Russian infantry, now separated from their vehicles and caught in open ground, faced the fragmentation effects of the high-explosive rounds. Each M31A1 warhead fragments into approximately 2,000 pieces of shrapnel, traveling at lethal velocities. The infantry units suffered catastrophic casualties. Those who survived the initial strikes attempted to take cover cover in the roadside ditches, but Ukrainian forces had anticipated this as well. At 0724, Ukrainian artillery units that had remained silent throughout the HIMARS strikes opened fire. 32 2S-22 Bodana self-propelled howitzers positioned 12 kilometers west of the highway began firing high-explosive rounds into the kill zone. Unlike the precision HIMARS strikes, this was area saturation fire, designed to prevent Russian forces from organizing any effective response. The howitzers fired at a rate of 6 rounds per minute, dropping 192 shells into the kill zone every 60 seconds. The combination of continued HIMARS strikes and artillery bombardment created conditions that made survival nearly impossible. The physical destruction was compounded by psychological effects. Russian soldiers, trained to operate as part of coordinated mechanized units, found themselves isolated, unable to communicate with command, and under sustained attack from weapons they couldn't see or counter. Unit cohesion collapsed. At 0741, Russian commanders in the rear elements of the convoy, outside the immediate kill zone, recognized the situation was unrecoverable. They ordered a general retreat. This retreat, however, was impossible to execute in an organized manner. The highway behind them was blocked by burning vehicles from the initial mine strikes. Attempts to move cross-country through the marshy terrain resulted in multiple vehicles becoming immobilized. Ukrainian drones tracked every movement and relayed coordinates to the artillery units, which adjusted fire to hit retreating elements. The ambush lasted 27 minutes from the first mine detonation to the cessation of Ukrainian fire. In that time, Russian forces lost 61 T-90 Mer tanks, 73 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, 38 self-propelled howitzers, 47 support vehicles, and an estimated 840 personnel, killed with over 1,000 wounded. The total monetary value of destroyed equipment exceeded $6.2 billion. More significantly, Russia lost 3 battalion tactical groups worth of combat power in less than half an hour. Ukrainian losses were 0. Not a single Ukrainian soldier was killed or wounded in the engagement. The HIMARS launchers relocated to secondary firing positions immediately after completing their fire missions, preventing any potential Russian counter-battery fire. The electronic warfare units shut down and displaced before Russian forces could organize any response. The entire Ukrainian force withdrew from the area by 0830, leaving only remote sensors to monitor Russian rescue and recovery operations. The immediate aftermath revealed the ambush's strategic impact. Russian forces had concentrated this convoy as the spearhead for their planned spring offensive. Its destruction didn't just eliminate specific equipment and personnel, it destroyed the offensive's entire operational timeline. Russian logistics had been calibrated to support this specific force package. Replacement equipment would take months to assemble and transport to the front. Replacement crews would require weeks of training to achieve minimal operational proficiency. But the deeper implications extended beyond the immediate tactical loss. Russian military planning had been based on assumptions that Ukrainian forces lacked the intelligence capabilities to predict Russian movements and the precision strike capabilities to destroy concentrated forces. This ambush shattered both assumptions. It demonstrated that Ukrainian intelligence could penetrate Russian operational security deeply enough to anticipate major offensive operations weeks in advance. It proved that Ukrainian forces could mass precision fires sufficient to destroy Russian armored formations without requiring close air support or direct fire engagement. The psychological impact on Russian forces was profound. Tank crews throughout the theater now understood that concentration, previously considered a source of strength, had become a critical vulnerability. Driving in a large convoy on a major highway, once considered relatively safe behind Russian lines, was now potentially suicidal. This forced changes to Russian operational procedures that significantly reduced their offensive capabilities. Dispersed forces move slower, consume more fuel, and are harder to coordinate. Russian logistics, already strained, became further burdened by the requirement to support dispersed operations. Western intelligence agencies analyzed the ambush with intense interest. The operation demonstrated integration of intelligence, electronic warfare, and precision fires at a level rarely seen in modern warfare. Ukrainian forces had created what military analysts call a multi-domain ambush, where success depended on synchronized effects across intelligence collection, electromagnetic spectrum control, and kinetic strike operations. The 96-hour intelligence preparation, the electronic warfare isolation of the kill zone, the sequential mine placement, the precision of the HIMARS targeting, and the timing of the artillery fires all had to work in perfect coordination. A failure in any single element could have allowed significant Russian forces to escape or mount an effective counterattack. The ambush also revealed significant advances in Ukrainian battlefield networking. The kill zone was monitored by 8 separate observation posts, 4 drone teams, and 3 electronic intelligence collection platforms. All of this intelligence was fused in real time and distributed to the fire control center, the HIMARS batteries, and the artillery units. The entire network operated under active jamming conditions that suppressed Russian communications while maintaining Ukrainian connectivity. This level of network resilience requires sophisticated frequency hopping communications, redundant data links, and carefully planned electronic warfare coordination. For Russia, the loss represented more than destroyed equipment. It exposed fundamental vulnerabilities in their operational approach. Russian doctrine emphasizes mass and concentrated firepower, but these principles assume that friendly forces can either achieve local air superiority or move quickly enough to prevent enemy forces from massing precision fires. In Ukraine, Russia has achieved neither. Ukrainian air defenses prevent Russia from operating fixed-wing aircraft over most of the front line, and Ukrainian intelligence networks now provide sufficient warning time to organize complex ambushes against Russian ground movements. The economic dimension compounds the military defeat. Each T-90M tank requires approximately 18 months to manufacture, even when production runs at maximum capacity. Russia's tank production facilities can output roughly 30 T-90Ms monthly under optimal conditions. Replacing the 61 tanks lost in this single ambush will take over 2 months of total production output. The destroyed BMP-3s, artillery pieces, and support vehicles represent additional months of production capacity. This creates a strategic attrition problem for Russia. If Ukraine can destroy armored vehicles faster than Russia can produce them, Russian mechanized capabilities will inevitably decline, regardless of tactical outcomes in individual battles. The destroyed ammunition and fuel present immediate operational challenges. Each artillery piece in the convoy carried approximately 200 rounds of ammunition. The destruction of 38 howitzers means 7,600 artillery rounds were lost. Russian logistics networks were already struggling to maintain adequate ammunition supplies to frontline units. This single loss represents roughly 3 days of artillery ammunition consumption for the entire Donetsk front. The fuel trucks in the convoy carried approximately 200,000 liters of diesel fuel, enough to keep 5 battalion tactical groups operational for 4 days. Intelligence gleaned from the ambush provided Ukraine with additional strategic advantages. Signals intelligence collected during the ambush revealed Russian communications protocols, command relationships, and decision-making processes. Ukrainian electronic warfare operators recorded Russian tactical radio communications during the engagement, providing insights into how Russian commanders respond under extreme stress. This intelligence informs future Ukrainian planning, allowing them to predict and exploit Russian tactical responses in subsequent engagements. The ambush demonstrated that modern warfare has fundamentally changed. Precision-guided munitions, real-time intelligence networks, and advanced electronic warfare have made traditional concentration of forces extremely dangerous unless accompanied by comprehensive air defense, electronic warfare superiority, and dominant intelligence capabilities. Russia possesses none of these advantages in Ukraine. This suggests that Russian attempts at large-scale offensive operations will continue to face catastrophic outcomes unless they fundamentally change their operational approach. Yet this victory presents Ukraine with its own challenges. The sophistication required to execute this ambush demands extensive resources. The intelligence preparation consumed 6 weeks of collection and analysis efforts. The HIMARS ammunition expenditure, while devastating to Russian forces, represents a significant draw on Ukrainian missile stocks. Each M31A1 rocket costs approximately $168,000. The ambush consumed roughly 576 rockets, representing a $96.7 million ammunition expenditure. Ukraine must carefully balance the operational tempo of such operations against the sustainability of their precision munitions stockpiles. This engagement reveals where modern conflict is heading. Wars are increasingly won by the side that can collect, process, and act on information faster and more accurately than their opponent. Ukraine's success wasn't primarily about having better equipment than Russia. The T-90M is a capable tank, and Russia possessed numerical superiority in the engagement. Ukraine won because they knew where Russian forces would be when they would arrive, and they had prepared a layered response that gave Russian commanders no viable options once the ambush was triggered. Information superiority translated into operational success. The ambush sends a message far beyond the Donetsk region. It demonstrates that smaller forces with superior intelligence and precision capabilities can devastate larger conventional formations. This has implications for military planning globally. Investments in intelligence collection, data fusion capabilities, precision munitions, and electronic warfare may provide greater combat power than equivalent investments in traditional platforms like tanks and artillery. The future belongs to forces that can see first, understand first, and strike first with precision. For those watching this conflict, the lesson is clear. Modern warfare rewards preparation, intelligence, and precision over mass and momentum. The side that controls information controls the battlefield, and the side that can act on that information with speed and accuracy controls the outcome. Ukraine set a trap that exploited every Russian assumption and vulnerability. Russia drove headlong into that trap with confidence born from numerical superiority. That confidence cost them $6 billion and 3 battalion tactical groups in 27 minutes. The question facing military planners worldwide is whether their own forces would fare any better under similar circumstances. Based on this engagement, the answer should prompt serious reflection and significant changes in how modern militaries organize, train, and equip themselves for conflicts where information superiority determines survival.